One of the hardest things to learn how to do is how to punctuate dialogue. The reason this is so difficult is because as your writing gets more and more sophisticated, more and more rules come into play, and dialogue is written in different ways according to what the sentence structure is that you're choosing to write. So today Madison's going to help me out with how to write dialogue. So the book we're going to look at first today is a personal favorite of mine. It's The 5 Little Peppers and How They Grew. And Daddy, I want to show you something. Inside the very front, it says, "With love to Carol on her birthday, grandmother." This was from my Granny Clark when I turned 7 years old. Pretty cool? Mm-hmm. Now, when you're first looking at how dialogue is written, it's a good idea to use a picture book, not a chapter book, because the chapter book has lots of text on the page. Now, this is a more complicated, higher level picture book, but Madison is a 4th grader, and I don't want to insult her intelligence by using a 1st or 2nd grade book. So we're going to take a look at this book, and I'm going to read you just a little bit at the beginning so you can get an idea of the story. And I believe on the next page or a couple pages from now, there is some dialogue we can take a look at and see what we notice about it. The Little Brown House. The little brown house was old. The floors cracked and groaned whenever anyone walked across one of its rooms. Brown-haired Polly blinked her eyes. She was finding it hard to see the basting threads that she was pulling out of the green cloth coat. "Oh dear," she exclaimed, "I wish we could have as much light as we need just once more." Okay, so here's some dialogue. "Oh dear," she exclaimed, "I wish we could have as much light as we need just once." So what do you notice about how this dialogue is written? And dialogue is what people say to each other, right, when it's written here. How do you know what Polly is saying, and how do you know what the author's telling us?
By the marks.
Those are quotation marks. So can you maybe just read what Polly is saying?
"Oh dear, I wish we could have as much light as we need just once."
Okay, so what was it the author said in that sentence?
She exclaimed.
Okay, and we're just going to call that the tag. Usually it's the word said, but if you're a really good author, really good writer, you use other words like exclaimed. Okay? So good. You can tell what the character said because there's quotation marks around it. Let's read a little further. Mrs. Pepper was winding threads from the coat onto an empty spool. "You don't need any light to see these threads," she said quietly. Then she heard a snapping sound. "Take care, Polly, you broke that. Thread costs a lot of money now." Okay, so in this paragraph, what is it that the author wrote? What's the tag?
She said quietly.
Right, because Mother actually said, you don't need any light to see these threads. Now, let's look just at this line, not the rest of the paragraph. What do you notice about the words that are inside the quotation marks? Is there any other punctuation there? Do you see any other punctuation? What do you see?
A comma.
A comma, okay. And the comma is next to the words that Mother said, right? And then there are quotation marks, okay? Now, if we look down here a little bit further into the paragraph, then she heard a snapping sound, and then there's some more dialogue. "Take here, Polly, you broke that. Thread costs a lot of money now." How many sentences do you see in that line of dialogue?
Three.
There are 3, right. And how do you know there are 3 sentences?
Because there are 3 periods.
3 periods. And then at the very end, where did the quotation marks come?
At the end.
Okay, let's look at the next line of dialogue. "Couldn't help it, Mamsie," said Polly. "It just seemed to break, and everything costs a lot now, it seems to me." Okay, so here the sentence actually goes from "I couldn't help it, Mamsie," said Polly. We've got the tag, said Polly, and the line of dialogue within the quotation marks, and there's a comma. And then not a new paragraph, same paragraph, so we know it's still Polly speaking. It just seemed to break, and everything costs a lot now. Notice that this dialogue here starts with a capital letter. Okay? And then the end of the dialogue, you know it's the end of the dialogue because there's quotation marks, but what comes right before the quotation mark?
The exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark. Then she picked up a pair of scissors and started to snip at it as she went on, and that's just some action that the author puts in there so you can picture what's going on in addition to hearing what they're talking about. And then we have another line of dialogue, but I'd still like some light, about 200 candles. And again, there's a quotation mark, and within that quotation marks there is an exclamation point. Now the next line of dialogue is spoken by the character Joel, Polly's brother. He says, 200 candles, echoed Joel. Oh, what a lot. Now notice that this is a new paragraph. And how do you know that's a new paragraph there?
Because it has a space.
What do we call that space when we start a new paragraph? It's indented.
Indented.
That's what indented, okay? And if you look down this, you can see there are a lot of indentations down this page, right? Not so many over here because a lot of this second page is action that the author is describing, what they're doing, okay? But over here where it's dialogue, there are lots of new paragraphs. So that means that the dialogue is either going back and forth between two characters or between 2 or 3 characters, okay? But notice when there's more than one piece of dialogue from the same speaker, it stays in the same paragraph. It only goes to a new paragraph when another speaker is starting to speak, okay? Okay, so quick little quiz. What do you call these words inside the quotation marks that the character says?
Dialogue.
Dialogue, good. And do you remember what I called she exclaimed, she said quietly? What are those words called?
Tag.
Tag. Those are tags. And those are just words that the author adds in to tell you how they said something. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we've got lots of lines of dialogue down this page. Let's just read the rest of the page and we'll see what's going on here. 200 candles, echoed Joel. Oh, what a lot. And Mrs. Pepper added, goodness, Polly, 200 candles all burning at once could set the little brown house on fire. Phronsie got up from the floor and walked over close to Polly. Standing very still, she looked up at her with big solemn eyes. We couldn't let that happen, she said. We wouldn't have anywhere else to go and live. Now, what's the tag from this paragraph that we just read?
She said.
She said. And what is the dialogue?
We couldn't let that happen. We wouldn't have anywhere else to go and live.
Okay, and the dialogue is enclosed by quotation marks. Notice right before you get to the tag, when the dialogue is done, you've got quotation marks, but there's a comma. Okay? Now, what we're going to do now is practice what we're learning about dialogue that we're actually seeing in a book. And I have a fun way for you to do that, and it's called the macaroni method. So, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Maybe you've learned a little bit more about how to write and punctuate dialogue, or perhaps you're a teacher watching this and you've learned a couple of tips for how to help your students write more correct dialogue and maybe take a shot at writing some more sophisticated dialogue. If this video was helpful to you, please consider subscribing and clicking on the notification bell so that you can get notified each time we upload a new video.
If you also like this video, make sure you leave a thumbs up, comment down below, and tell your friends.
Because we want you to
Never stop learning.